Starting my audio log now. Right, well, it's been, once again, another hard toil in the archives, but my department has received a request to summarise a vast amount of information. Over at 32B, I guess the best way to describe it is this seems to be like the spine of the facility. If you like, if the facility's like a nervous system, the spine's the central column everything passes through, from the top, where everything gets thought about, straight to the rest of the body. And in many ways, then it goes back up for storage and so on. It's a weird analogy, but the point is everything passes through here at some point. So, we've been asked to formally summarise information, and in that effort, my part in this will be discussing and formally shrinking down information regarding the major powers in the world. Now, there are others out there that are more hidden, but these are the ones that we've been provided, and some of these I had only just learned about myself. Some of this information may be suppressed, and there may be more out there that I will later have access to. Potentially, if I get moved to a different department, it can happen. With that being said, let's begin with, I guess, discussing the major players, the ones who really have some staying power in the world. Where would I be without discussing the grand theology of Neo-Eden? This city, our beautiful utopia. The city is the best way to describe it is we are a theocracy with extremely advanced technology, but also filled with corporate power structures, all vying for bits of power in the city underneath the grand clergy of the Maker, led by the High Prophet. This city is a city-state, as I mentioned before, in 8 quadrants with millions of souls within. As I mentioned this all before, but for the sake of documentation, I'm mentioning it again now, just to be clear. Now, why are we able to exist where we are? As for where we are, actually, we are in the middle of the Atlantic wastes. As some people may remember from a prior log, I discussed the Waistland and the Great Drought that caused it. Well, we're in the centre of that, and there are many reasons. Some I know, some I don't, but to my understanding, it's strategic. Got a lot of coverage of land, and the city's great wall guns can see along vast distances. Now, you might ask, what happens if we were to be attacked? Maker forbid. Well, first, they would have to dare challenge our mighty cyber angels. Both the high and low orders, these beings are beyond human. Men and women who have transcended all mortality into these just impossibly miraculous beings that can fly at impossible speeds, wield weapons no normal man or woman would dare even consider, and are able to, well, be a walking army on themselves. The high and low orders, the main distinction to my understanding is the degree of power that they can exert. The lower orders are far above a normal human, but the high orders are even further than that, and supposedly can, if they wish, move so quickly that they can cross the planet and back. And whereas the low orders rarely do this, the high orders quite often will go out into space. I do not know the full rationale for this, but they can do this. They don't need to breathe. If anything, I'm told they breathe to make you more comfortable with them. What powers them? What gives them all this? I wish I could tell you, but it's certainly a miracle. But who supports them? Because there's only so many. We have a lot of cyber angels, but they can't be everywhere, and frankly, there's things that don't require their attention. So, we have the cherubim drones, who are like kin to them in many ways. These drones appear to be technology transcended into angelic-like status. They come in many forms. Some of the largest examples are gunship-sized creatures, or even tanks, essentially. Again, miraculous, to say the least. I'll go into more detail on them another time. Supporting them are the paladins, power armor-wielding cyborgs, who are gifted with far greater weapons and arms and armor than most normal humans can handle, or would ever be warranted to have. They are some of our elite, and they are truly a force to be reckoned with. Their armor are a mix of medieval-like designs you'd have seen in old tapestries, but also with a flair of modern armor. And obviously, the miraculous materials we devised to create their power armor. The smallest weaponry they tend to wield are these, I believe they're called railchem weapons. Essentially, a 50 caliber machine gun that's part railgun to accelerate even faster than the normal propellant. I won't go too detailed in, but point is, they are very, very deadly. In case that wasn't deadly enough, there is a halfway point between human and angel. The Nephilim. Supposedly, they are paladins who have been chosen and further augmented, not just cybernetically, but genetically, bulking up to be at least 2 heads taller than most men can ever grow, and rippling with muscle and holy strength. Not quite to the degree of angels, and certainly not as efficient, but considering how far they are above a normal human, you won't be too upset about their performance, so I'm told. I've never seen one in person, but from reports, they are certainly effective, and can wield almost the kind of caliber an angel can pull out. They are special forces, so makes sense I've never seen one myself. But, of course, they are only few in number. There are, of course, our normal troops, and those who are very fanatical to the faith who willingly augment themselves into a weapon, and our standard troops along with them, who are augmented themselves, as many are in Neo-Eden. The hell, I have to be. How do you think I stay up so long? These, altogether, with advanced technologies, hover vehicles, yes, we have pretty much ubiquitous access to hover vehicles, high-speed jets. We have quite the arsenal, and a couple of outposts here in Brazil and Britannia. And to my understanding as well, the lands that used to be called New York, we also have an outpost there too. To my understanding, the Britain outpost is there for the rain, as I mentioned in the prior log. The Brazil one is to monitor the Amazon to ensure that it's still healthy. The New York one, I'm not fully aware as to why. I've heard some reports it's there as early warning, but I'm not entirely sure. But we'll move on from Neo-Eden, as much as it pains me to do so. We'll go into more details on it another time. The next, we talk about the Empire of Dravania. I've called them the Empire quite often. They are a massive empire. To my understanding, one of the Maker's disciples, instead of staying in Neo-Eden and helping found the city with the Maker, like many of the others, he left in search of his own land, and came upon a land that still had rain, and had people that were hardy enough to survive. He then forged them into a mighty army, and then conquered the neighbouring nations that were just about surviving. As such, the Empire of Dravania started round the Mongolian steppe, and apparently in a repeat of history, conquered much of northern China, southern Russia, and as far as the lands formerly known as Turkey. They went very wide, and, to my understanding, have a vast army of mostly unaugmented troops that are given a decent amount of weaponry, mass-produced, mind you. Very rarely they are promoted to a grenadier role, where they're given some more advanced weapons. Anti-material rifles, lasers, the works. But their armoured divisions are often a bit lighter than ours, making use of far more fast-moving vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, everything that's very quick. Their whole dogma is speed, and to support all of this, they have their own cyborgs that are not as mighty as our angels, but they're certainly the next best thing, from all reports. The mighty Dragoons and Enlightened. A Dragoon is essentially, if you're familiar with the old Greek myths of centaurs, take that, but make it a cyborg. These are humans who have been heavily augmented. Their upper torso detached from the rest of themselves and mounted to a great equine body. This then further augmented with their arms being replaced, their internal organs being augmented. They're very barely human anymore. They can continue for vast distances and carry extremely advanced particle weaponry that just devastates whatever they come across. Supporting them are the Enlightened. The Enlightened are Dragoons who have proven themselves even beyond a normal Dragoon, and I would stress a Dragoon is the symbol of that empire. They are their pride and joy, and it is considered a true divine blessing to become one, as much of a sacrifice as it is. But the Enlightened are Dragoons with wings that can go not quite as quick as our angels, but They almost catch up, but they act more like gunships that can descend onto the battlefield like avatars of war. The weaponry of these, well, top of internal weaponry, much like our own, but not quite as small, they can carry heavy autocannons, recoilless rifles, missiles, and often come with various melee weapons to charge in. A favourite of theirs is the particle lance, a weapon of both melee and range capabilities. Should they decide they tire of you cowering from them, they will charge, and the more they charge, the lance will heat up hotter and hotter until it burns straight through armour. And, well, you as well. The only heavy armour they've been reported to have are their walker tanks that wield particle weapons and are decently armed and armoured. It's machine guns and, to my understanding, shielding, but not quite to the degree of some of the dragoons. But again, they don't care as much about the walker tanks as they do their pride and joy warriors. Unlike us, they don't have as much shield technology. But what they lack in that technology, they make up for in numbers, and the technology they do have, they can produce a lot of. Having many, many millions of souls to utilise is helpful when you're a mighty empire like theirs. Now on to a different kind of nation. The Republic of Medradin, or often sometimes called Medradin. The Republic operate within what used to be Southern Europe. This includes South France, Italy, Switzerland, but they also are within the Mediterranean itself, being as it's long since dried, and go around North Africa as well. They are a fairly large nation, and the only example of a democracy that still exists. Their forces are fairly mundane, fairly standard infantry divisions, tanks, aircraft. They don't really have anything out there, like us or the Empire. But what they do have is a vast array of power armor, and this is where they follow the Maker in. They've integrated technology into humanity via a bit of surgery to allow you to connect your nervous system to the armor. But these great suits, in some cases, allow for flight, enhanced durability and the ability to wield heavy weaponry, and allow them to engage in remote hacking, much like some of the more cybernetically augmented, like the Dragoons or the Angels. Now, a big thing to note is, beyond these elements, their army is fairly conventional. They don't have much in the way of advanced weaponry beyond some laser projectors, and they have no shielding, bar one or two examples of unique suits they've devised, and some reports of more mechanized, heavier suits, but not substantiated, to my understanding. Other than this, they will often gift their troops exoskeletons to allow them to perform the roles of heavier infantry if needed. They've got a decent population, but they're very defensive, and often more prone to diplomacy if possible. The next group I'd like to discuss is the Stimmers. I've mentioned them a lot, and I realise I've not given the time of day, so today I will. The Stimmers are a semi-nomadic people, utilising vast sandcraft to move across the deserts. Many of them supposedly descended from many in the New World. The North American continent in particular is filled with many of the Stimmer clans, but due to the high amount of weaponry that was already available to the civilian population back in the day, these clans were able to unify together and fight off many of the creatures and nightmarish horrors that infested that part of the world, though it wasn't very inhabitable. It was hit hard. So, many of them took to looting and stealing the old naval crafts that the nation was known for. One clan in particular supposedly even stole a supercarrier and rebuilt it for land travel. I'll go into them another time in particular, but to note with the Stimmers, their technological level is very low. Many of their weapons are, in comparison, very primitive. Ballistics, yes, but missiles are particularly rare and only given to some units. But what they do have is genetic augmentation rife throughout their entire culture. They retain many of the gene vaults, supposedly a gift from one of the Maker's disciples, Saint Genesis. And to this end, many of their more elites, their marauders, for example, are modified, but as a result, they cannot breathe normal air. They must be in a continuous, what is essentially like a medical nebulizer? Something that essentially helps one breathe better, but to my understanding, this is to pump them with combat stimulants and allow them to operate at maximum capacity. Their augmented body straining against itself. They are bigger and bulkier than the average person, and wield very brutal weaponry. Quite symbolic of them is their gas masks they wear all the time, with a mix of Kevlar and plate mail. They will make use of a lot of animals in the wild. Great reptiles they've bred and augmented into these, essentially, walking tanks. Now, they do have tanks, I would like to stress. Some clans don't, but a lot of them do. The Dune tank, as it's often called, is a real hodgepodge. It looks like something from, well, centuries ago, frankly, but it does the job. And some of them become even further augmented as they steal. They are very keen to loot. A class within the Stimmers are the Orcoids, as we call them. They essentially become almost scaled in their skin and have great tusks in their mouth. They stand much taller than the average person, can withstand light arms fire to their bare skin, or scale, I guess, and are often able to wield literal Gatling guns in their bare hands. 2 of them, sometimes, depending how augmented we're talking. They are faithful, though, and we do rely on them occasionally, as much as some of them are a little far from human now. I'm afraid that is where I have to start talking about the less human elements, as, well, the Stimmers were the last of the faithful I could discuss. We'll start with the Raiders. The Heratic Raiders are bandits, marauders, monsters, the lot of them. They worship literal demons. They make use of a lot of the more scrap weaponry, like the Stimmers, but they often augment theirs with horrific poisons and toxins that they found. They will heavily augment themselves, many of them looking bestial. Some of their units will even include those who have extended their limbs to be like a Wendigo-like creature, prowling the desert, hunting for flesh. They're that insane, honestly. Where the Stimmers make use of sandcrafts that look like naval vessels, the Raiders will quite often create horrors of flesh and metal to pull their great barges across the sand. Occasionally, they'll just lie in wait in known areas where convoys will come and descend upon them. Their numbers made up of various ne'er-do-wells and heretics who have greatly augmented themselves with whatever they can find. And they are effective as warriors, but frankly, they are delusional and often are just used by another faction as a vanguard, if nothing else. There is more to them, but the knowledge is restricted. I must now discuss the next group, the Unchained Legion, and I say this with bated breath, as these are true monsters. They, to my understanding, utilize demonic entities into themselves, or corrupt AI merged with man to create a cyber demon of sorts. They gather in vast groups, led by damned tyrants that fly aloft on great wings. They are a horrific bastardization of the human form, and are to be hunted down if found. And believe me, if we could, we would destroy the lot of them, as they are truly unfit for this world in every facet. Their numbers are made up of various unholy amalgamations of flesh and metal. They will often take prisoners to forcibly combine them with demonic cybernetics to create these wailing beasts. They don't use a lot of traditional arms and armor. Their tanks are literally made of people, and what armor they have is wrought together with hellish iron and unknown metallurgies I dare even imagine. There are those among their ranks who have even gone beyond any mortal strength and rival even their leaders, only prevented from leading the warband themselves by their delusions and insanity. Great titans supposedly walk in some parts of the world, kept together by these demonic warbands. They were the greatest threat to humanity after the cleansing, and it wasn't till the likes of the Cyber Angel or the Dragoon became commonplace that these creatures could be fought off. Thankfully now they're almost thing of the past, but every so often a demon titan is created, and woe unto any mortal man who has to witness such a horror. I talk now in very hushed tones of the last major power, and I will have to keep this short, as there is very little on the Waistland Horrors. The Waistland Horrors are not a nation, not a faction. They are a swarm of flesh, metal, and hate. They are a virus. Flesh that pulls in other flesh and mechanical components to create these beasts that look like various long-dead animals or insectoid creatures. Whatever form they take, even great leviathans in the seas, so I'm told. But they forever augment themselves further, mindlessly, until supposedly a leader-like creature emerges from their ranks to lead them. And even then, something above that they worship like a god. They can incorporate all kinds of weaponry, and it is advised, if you should ever find them, run, or set yourself alight so they can't take you. They can integrate any weapon or armor or arms into their bodies. Supposedly there are forms even designed to subvert tanks and aircraft. Only those blessed seem to be immune to this, thankfully. Else I fear one of our angels could have been taken. But the Maker sought to give us tools to protect them from such horrors. Normal men, though, not so much. They appear to have a liking for cyborgs in particular. It seems they enjoy our suffering, and also enjoy absorbing the memories of them. They are disgusting to even discuss, frankly, and I wish to not talk any more of them. I will one day have to, but I'm not looking forward to that day. Just know that in the darkest parts of our world lie creatures that were best left forgotten. Now, there are other things that stalk the wastes and exist in some places. I've heard reports of those who raise the dead using cybernetics. I've heard of those who worship the beings that cause the cleansing themselves and think that we are all deserving of damnation. But these are very few and far reports, and we'll have to see if one day they get accentuated and proven. But that is where I'll end this log here. I do hope that was of some interest and use, and hopefully in time I'll be able to detail more about them. But for anyone reviewing these logs, do let me know if there's any more you want to know on any of these. This will be Archivist Jerome, signing out for now. This was an audio log of the Neo-Eden archives. Thank you once again for listening. I do hope you've had a good time. Please let me know if any of the factions introduced in this one are of interest to you, and I will do my best to detail more about them. Like I said before, this setting is ongoing and being created, so details on some of them are more less than others, but if interest is there, I will work to try and detail them faster so that I can deliver these logs to you regarding them. But if there's anything in particular you want to know about any of these, or any topics of the setting that you'd really be keen to hear about, please let me know. This is being recorded before the next one goes out, so any comments from the prior one I will try and hopefully have seen by now and adjust it accordingly. But please feel free to comment any issues you've had or anything you think I could improve. But with that all being said, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Till then, have a good one, guys.